Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the GeForce GTX 760 and seeing how well it can run some games in 2021. You can see in MSI Afterburner along with GPU-Z, we do have the GTX 760 showing up. I am running driver version 466.27, which is the latest one at the time of benchmarking, and it's only like a few weeks old. So they are still putting out updates for the GTX 760. Here you can see all the specs in GPU-Z. This GPU was released on July 25th of 2013 on the 28 nanometer process node. We do have 2 gigabytes of VRAM with a 1033 megahertz base clock and a 1098 boost. I am running this with the Ryzen 7 1700 at 4 gigahertz along with 16 gigabytes of DDR4 2666. For the exact version, I have the Gigabyte WindForce 2X OC version. It just looks like that. It's pretty normal card. You can see here it does have basically a 5% overclock over the normal clock speed. So a normal 760 would only have a 980 megahertz base with a 1032 boost. As you can see, temperatures on this card are very good. We only hit 65 degrees Celsius while staying under 60% fan speed. Starting off with Valorant at 1080p using the high settings, we got a average frame rate of 147 FPS with 1% loads staying above 100 and 0.1% loads staying above 30. This was very playable. As you can see there on like the frame time graph, there are no spikes, indicating that there are basically no micro stutters. This is a very playable experience, getting over 120 frames per second.
Deleted.
Moving on to Fortnite using medium settings with epic view distance, we got a pretty decent frame rate, just dropping in, staying above 60 frames per second. Dropping in is kind of like where it does tend to stutter, but frame rate here doesn't matter a ton. It's not really, you don't really have to be able to really be doing anything here. You can see that there are a few micro stutters on the frame time graph. And now just kind of in a bit of combat and dying like I always do. The frame rate does drop to the high 60s, but this is still definitely very playable. And over playing a few games, there's definitely no big stutters. Next up in GTA 5, I ran the built-in benchmark. We're using a mixture of high and very high settings, gave us a frame rate average of 64 FPS. Next up, we had Rogue Company. We're at 1080p using medium settings with epic view distance. We average 102 frames per second. Again, this was very playable, and you can see on the frame time graph we have almost no spikes, indicating that there were no micro stuttering.
Bomb secured. Protect it. Enemies eliminated. Great work.
Next up, we had Cyberpunk 2077, and using the lowest settings at 1080p, it was, well, unplayable. We were getting 22 frames per second with a lot of stuttering, so you won't really be able to play Cyberpunk on the CPU. You could technically drop the render resolution, but this game just looks really bad when you drop the render resolution at all. Next up, we have Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, where using 1080p at the low settings, we did average 62 FPS, but if you can look at the graph, you can see there's just so many micro stutters. So like, for example, whenever you get close to the ground like that, you can see it just stutters a ton. So this is like sort of playable if you don't want to be doing like stuff where you're kind of getting close to the ground, but whenever you do that, your frame rate just really tanks, and this game doesn't look very good at low settings. Next up, we have Hitman II, or at 1080p using a mixture of low and medium settings. We got a average of 61 frames per second. This was just kind of like in the final initiation mission or whatever it really is, but this does seem to be like decently demanding, and I've kind of decided to use this as a one-eye benchmark. If you are doing missions that are mostly inside, your frame rate will be pretty great, but whenever you're outside, it does tank down to the low 30s.
Is it dangerous? Well, it must be, mustn't it? Why else would there be a safety protocol? I'm not crazy about airplanes. Is it going to do that thing where it flips on its head? I don't like that one bit. Not one bit.
Don't worry. You're in good hands. This way, please.
And lastly, I just ran 3D Mark Time Spy and 3D Mark Firestrike. Here are the results for those. Alright, so the GeForce 760 is definitely still pretty decent in 2021 and can still handle some esports games with higher settings and some older AAA games with medium to low settings. The pricing on these makes absolutely no sense right now, with them often selling for over $100 on eBay, and at that price, I guess I would just recommend waiting until pricing has gone back down. I know that that's kind of what everyone is saying, and that's been like 8 months now, so if you don't want to wait, this is definitely a card that can't handle some gaming, although when the prices go back down, this is going to go back to being worth like $50. So I guess that's really all I can say, that I wouldn't really recommend this at its current pricing, but there's really no better option, so I guess, I don't know. This is still a pretty decent card for gaming, so I mean, I don't really know what I'm even saying here, but yeah. So I would recommend this card as a pretty great card for some lighter gaming at around $75, and at that price you won't be losing a ton of money when prices go back down, but it is pretty hard to find these at that price point. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.